What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Bitcoin today. It is the 15th day of March, and here we are sitting at about $71.5 thousand roughly, with 9 hours and 40 minutes left in the day. Hit that like button, subscribe. Thank you all for being here. Let's get into it, okay? It is Sunday. It's the end of the week. With that, we'll definitely look at the weekly and do some weekly analysis. It's actually a really nice weekly close. And I think on the 2-week, yes, we're actually getting a 2-week close as well. And that's very, very important. We'll go over that. But just looking at this here on the daily time frame, we have been climbing slowly but surely over really the past week. It hasn't been too exciting, or the moments that were exciting got given back immediately. I do expect that we will inevitably see prices that are higher than this, higher than these levels here at about 74, 75K. But perhaps we do pull back first, right? The going thought is that from this high to however low we go, that we would see, what was it, if I'm not mistaken? I think, and we can go over this again today. I'll do the analysis for it, but I think something between a $6,000 to a $9,000 drop, if I'm not mistaken. From here, let's just see 6,000 to 9,000. So far, what we've seen was a 3,700 drop. Okay, so far not a 6,000. We're about, a little over 50% of the way there, 60% of the way there. We have more to go. Okay, likely we have more to go to the downside before we can go to the upside. So this little movement up, I was not expecting that the weekend would close to the upside, right? That's going to leave us with a gap up, so we would have a gap to fill to the downside going into the next week. What I mean by gap is the Bitcoin CME chart, right? Bitcoin futures. If this is new to you, then I'm glad to be showing it to you, but it shouldn't be that new. I mean, if you've been in crypto, you're probably very aware of the CME gap, and new people are not coming in right now. Anybody who's sticking around in crypto, you've probably been around since the good times, so you probably know what I'm talking about, right? We're likely going to come up and fill this gap at some point, but right now, this price is at 71.3K, which is basically the same price that we're at here. It's basically virtually the same thing, but if today closes here or higher, likely this chart will print an open that does give us a little bit of a gap to the downside. So we will likely fill that gap before moving higher. Anyways, 71.5K, I'm taking my sweet time. Let's just move on with this, okay? 1 hour time frame. Not a whole lot of volume, not a whole lot of volume at all on this move up. We were getting some good volume, good little consistent spikes here on this most recent move. No volume at all. Why is that? It's because it's the weekend, right? Every time that there's a gap in volume here, that was the weekend, right? That was literally the end of Friday, going into Saturday, Sunday, gap in volume. We do the same thing. We keep on going back. Where was there a gap in volume? This actually was a little bit less of a gap, but it was back here during the weekend. That was actually a little bit more consistent volume, to be fair, though. And that was, I think, the weekend where the Iran attacks were starting to happen. 71.5K now, looking at the 1 hour time frame. The RSI tried to get into the overbought zone. It did a little bit, but we've rejected there. We have found resistance in between the 382 and the 0.5, which is pretty common, actually. I wouldn't have been surprised if we went all the way up to the 0.5 or even the golden ratio itself. The fact we're back below the 382 doesn't take this out of the equation. We absolutely still can see Bitcoin from here go up to about 72.5 to 72.8K at the highest. I don't think that we're going to get there. I would think that we could get there, but I don't think that we get there. I still think that it's possible that we could come up here, get a slightly higher high, get people excited, right at the 0.5, right at 72K, right at these points of prior resistance here, and then reject. Either way, though, we're basically finding resistance at that level right now. Like we were literally less than $100 away from that level. So tomato, whatever. Looking at our indicators, the RSI definitely got overbought, and now we're breaking out to the downside, breaking down, I should say. Overall, a very bullish 1 hour RSI, if we're being fair, but this movement up short is different than any of the prior movements up we've seen thus far, right? Less consistent in the overbought zone, less volume overall, less strength, it seems. Stochastics coming down, these look bearish here. The MACD is, at the moment, it looks like it's about to cross down, which would be bearish, but it's overall bullish. The MACD, I would say overall, is definitely bullish, yeah. 4 hour time frame. Sorry. Ooh. The 4 hour time frame, I think, is rather telling. And this was something that I said in yesterday's video. I'm like, we can find support here, But if we come up and find resistance at the 60, or really anywhere here, even all the way up to the overbought zone, um, and we come back down to the 50, that's not really a good thing. That's typically not a good thing, right? If you're getting overbought, bouncing out the 50, getting overbought, bouncing out the 50, and now you're not getting overbought, or you're rejecting the overbought zone, you're getting a weaker reading, that will likely be the rejection point, which I think is here now instead of up here, right? It's right there. The rejection point at which we begin this drop that takes us below here. And now here's where the fun stuff starts, okay? We've identified this at length plenty of times over the last month now, over the last 2 weeks, I should say. All these points that we found resistance at since we've been in this little consolidation range here from the very beginning of February for Bitcoin, we have found resistance here on the RSI, right? All the way up at this overbought area, in this overbought territory. And we found support here in the oversold area, in the oversold territory. And obviously, yes, we find resistance at the overbought zone. Yes, we find resistance at the oversold zone. That's not what I'm talking about, though. This seems to be directly correlated specifically to these levels. Yes, we got a little bit above it there. Yes, we stopped a little bit above the oversold zone here, but more or less, it's all the same thing. It's all like the same reactions. It's not like this and then like this, right? These are totally different reactions than what we're seeing here. If that's not obvious, I don't know what to tell you. If you're looking at these and saying that this is the same thing, it's not the same thing. I don't know how to make it more obvious. Here we're clearly range bound, moving sideways. Here we're trending downwards, right? Like it's totally different dynamic. And maybe I know what I'm talking about, but if you're new, it might be harder for you to grasp. I don't know, but I feel like this right here is just a basic level of comprehension, right? Low point, was it the perfect low? No, but it was a low point. We moved up. High point, was it the perfect high right when we got overbought? No, there was a slightly higher high, but it was still a high point. We came down. High point, high point, high point, high point, high point, high point. Low point, low point, low point. Even here, very close, low point, relatively speaking, and low point. If we measure all of these little drops that we've seen, we take out the RSI entirely. We take it out of context. How have the drops been this whole time, right? We look at this from a high to a low, from a high to a low here before the pivot, from a high to a low here before the pivot, or right there at that pivot. We just keep on going, high to low, high to low here. Whoops. All of these drops. And I could, if I wanted to, I could take this overall drop and make it like that, but I don't think we need to. I think that here, when we rejected the overbought zone, we reset ourselves, we came back up to the overbought zone, and then we dropped again. So if we see something similar to this, we can just use these same measurements. But here, this is a 3-day period, this is a 4-day period, a 3-day period, a 3-day period, a 4-day period. That's the lengths of time. I've done it enough to know it like the back of my hand. These drops here took 3 days, 4 days, 3, 3, 4. Okay, that's the time frame that we're working with, from the high to the low. 3, 4, 3, 3, 4. Okay. The drop here was $7,000, $5,300, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. Okay. And so I said $6,000 to $9,000. I guess I was off by a little bit. 8,500 might be the highest, and 5.3 might be the lowest. But so far, all we've gotten was a $3,700 drop. $3,700 here, right? And it says 36. I didn't actually get the low on there, but $3,700. And this happened all in the same day. 4-day process, 3-day, 3-day, 4-day process, 3-day, right? We've got more to go. That's my thoughts, right? Why is that my thoughts? Well, we're behaving the exact same as we have throughout this whole range, where these consistent kind of range of drops and time frames have happened. So, with that in mind, the going theory that I have is, this is very lazy TA, but if it walks like a duck, it squawks like a duck, we're going to call it a duck. I think in 3 to 4 days time from this high, which should be 2 to 3 days now, we will find a low that is either $5,300 below at a minimum, and we'll still say 9,000 at a maximum. Screw it, why not? Because 8,500, I mean, let's just say that, right? 8,000, we could see an $8,500 drop, whatever, something like that, just below this low. I personally doubt that the drop we get is at this low or at this low. I personally doubt that either of those outcomes happen. Most likely it will be somewhere in this range. It could be a lesser drop. That's possible. It could be a greater drop. That's also possible. But I'm going with the given range we have established here. That's what I'm going with. Three days time would put us here late Monday. It is mid-Sunday right now as far as the charts are concerned. It might be early Sunday for you in the United States of America, but that's not where this time frame is working off of, right? This is UTC. It's like the Universal Time Clock or something like that. I don't know. I forget what UTC is. I forget what it stands for. I think it's like Universal Time. I don't know. But it's not run off the Western Hemisphere's time. It's just Bitcoin's time, okay? And it's not specifically for Bitcoin, but that's the time zone that Bitcoin runs off of. So whenever I say it's midway through the day, I mean Bitcoin's day, not your day. You're probably just waking up, right? Or you've been awake for a couple hours, but your day's still in the beginning phases, right? It's still morning for most Americans by the time you're watching this. And I say Americans because obviously, in case you haven't noticed, I'm American. I know that the large portion of my audience is American, but we also get a lot of people from the Eastern Hemisphere and also Europe and various other places as well. And Latin America and South America as well. Shout out to all the homies from all around the world. Australians, New Zealanders, Germans, French, Belgium. There's some people from Belgium for sure. Definitely up in the UK. We've got some people in the UK. Anyways, I don't want to keep talking because I'll show you my lack of geographical knowledge. Let's just continue, okay? 3 days, probably late Monday. 4 days, probably late Tuesday to very early Wednesday. So early Wednesday, late Monday, somewhere within the next 24 to 48 hours, let's even say like 24 to 55 hours, something like that, we will likely see this low happen between this range. Resistance here at prior resistance, I think we're going to come down. You're going to hear everybody talk about it like this. I wouldn't be surprised if coming down here, everyone starts calling this a head and shoulders pattern. And maybe it is. Maybe it is. If it were to be a head and shoulders and we were to regard it as such, first off, it's a very complex head and shoulders pattern. That drop would actually cause a steeper decline than anything we've seen so far. We had a bull flag here, a bull flag right here, and our measure move from that pattern didn't play out. So it might be a head and shoulders pattern on a short-term time frame, but the measure move doesn't play out still, okay? They're just ideas. I forget what I was going to say, but that's okay. We can move on. 4-hour RSI behaving exactly like you would expect it to if you were to come down. Now we have an hour and 28 minutes left in this 4-hour period. Let's see if we can't come back up and close it green. Bitcoin seems to like to do that at the end of these 4-hour periods. It likes to go in the opposite direction, but maybe this one will continue to push down or at the very least stay here. The stochastics do look bearish here. The RSI is bullish overall, but I think it is taking a bearish stance at the moment. And the MACD is also starting to take a little bit of a bearish stance. Overall bullish, but when you're dying off in bearish momentum, you get right to this point where you're about to cross and then you start building bearish momentum again. That's not a good thing, okay? When I say it's not a good thing, I'm not talking like we're going below 60K like all the bears will once we're at these lows, right? Like everybody did when we were here, right? And I was part of that. I thought that we were going to go below 60K, but I didn't think that we were going to go too far below it. I just think that we're going to go somewhere above this low, but lower still, lower than these lows here overall. Daily time frame. Daily RSI, very productive, very strong, resilient. We can come down and bounce off the 50. It's not a big deal. Stochastics look weird, but they look positive. The MACD is actually at a point where I was originally expecting that we'd find some resistance, and you can see that we're starting to stave off. We're starting to die in our bullish momentum here. This pale green versus the dark green on the histogram. The dark green is when the blue line is separating from the orange line. and the orange line's probably still growing like this. It's just the blue line's growing faster. It gets separated. Whenever the blue line and the orange line are coming together, that's whenever you die off in your bullish momentum. And then whenever they cross, that's whenever it flips red, right at the cross there. Anyways, finding resistance here at the 0 could promote a bigger drop overall. That doesn't mean that we drop through the floor, but we might get tied up here. Maybe we find our low within the next 3 or 4 days, but then we consolidate for a longer period of time, and then sometime this coming week or the following week, that'll be whenever we break through the 0. And we could see with this break through the 0, we will likely see a breakout of this overall range, overbought territory, which also would lead to a breakout of this overall range, and then overbought territory with the stochastics as well. Overbought on the RSI, overbought on the stochastics, and a break above the 0 on the MACD potentially looming. That's very bullish circumstances, my friend. Okay, it is not something to fear, but still, I think that we will see a little bit of a pullback beforehand, right? We're getting ready. We're getting ready for this next move up. It's just not yet. Might be a little bit of an end of month rally. Looking at this on the weekly time frame, hit the 1272, 1414 area. Wow, we actually found direct resistance basically at this 100 level. By the way, from a FIB perspective, that's not good. That typically promotes, this like lower idea. I'm not running with that yet because I don't think it's official that we found resistance here, right? We had a scam wick last week, but here we are closing up higher. This looks like we want to go higher. And typically in these scenarios, you would expect to find resistance around the 886 or maybe as high as the 786. We could go higher, but I doubt it. I personally doubt that we get above 80K. This is going to be a good weekly close. We look at the weekly RSI, and we're actually getting out of the oversold zone. If we go through this, okay, we look at Bitcoin's history, BTC USD, we are on Coinbase. Let's go to the all-time history index, okay? All-time history. You haven't been oversold on your weekly RSI too often. And the time that we've been oversold is small as well, right? It's a very limited amount of time. What we're doing this week is we're coming out of the oversold zone. Those instances where we've seen the weekly RSI come out of the oversold zone are few and far in between. However, they still exist, and I think it's important that we compare them now. So we're going to do that. You came out of the oversold zone there. You bounced right off it there. I'm not going to count that. You came out of the oversold zone here once and then twice. You came out of the oversold zone here. You got into it and then you came out of it basically that same week. So we will count it. That is a rejection, but you technically did go in and out and then out of it here. Those are a little bit more like bounces. I mean, maybe I shouldn't even count that. I don't know. We're also coming out of it now. Well, in the very, very, very beginning, the time of the dinosaur, we were oversold, we came out of it, and that kicked off our bull market. We came out of it here, both times we came out of it, and were we at the end of our bear market? Depending on who you are, you might say yes, you might say no. Clearly it's not the very end, but in a time factor and a price factor, you're like 75% of the way there, 70% of the way there. You're pretty close to the end. Were you dumb? Were you dumb for buying here? No. The second attempt, however, provided a more suitable low. Did that mean that we rallied through the roof immediately? No. It took a while. And even this rally, it still took a while before things pumped, and still took a while, and then we really got exciting, right? From this point here, we still hadn't seen new all-time highs for years, okay? It was like 2 years before we saw new all-time highs, and a good bit of that time we were moving sideways and we were boring, okay? But was it the low? Yeah, it was the low of the bear market. Was this the low area? And I don't have it pinpoint right at the point where we got out of the oversold area. But yeah, this was the low. It marked the low. It literally did. Was this the low of the COVID crash? Yes, it marked the low. And maybe that's a rejection off the oversold zone. We don't have to count it. But again, did you move up immediately either of these times? Here, you didn't move up immediately. You moved sideways. Here, you didn't move up immediately. You actually moved sideways for like 5 weeks. We did have a little volatility, But then we moved up again a little bit still, but again moving sideways. We didn't have the bullish part until later. We got oversold here and we came out of it. That's what this line is whenever you're coming out of the oversold zone in the RSI, did you, from this point, start your bull market? No, you actually had lower to go. Were you smart for buying here? I think anybody with a brain would say yes, you were. Even if you bought the highest price in this range, you did really good. Good job. That's an A+ effort in the bear market there. Maybe an A- if you bought the top, but still an A nonetheless. We did not pump immediately. We moved sideways. And then we did get a pump, but we still moved sideways, right? This and all in this same kind of area of sidewaysness. It was, again, from the low before we saw the high, it was like 2 years. Things aren't that exciting afterwards. So the question then is, are we at this point where, historically speaking, Bitcoin is typically right at the low, maybe just a little bit above there, or are we in a point like we were back in the 2015 bear market where we have one more kind of big drop to go? Still a predominant amount through the bear market. That's the question. But the reason I'm focusing on this so hard right now is that this is a big deal. There's maybe like 5. We could count them on our hands, the amount of times that we've gotten into and out of the oversold zone. This is a big deal. This is end of cycle stuff. From a time and a price perspective, it is end of cycle stuff. Okay? But that doesn't mean that it's right now, and that doesn't mean that we're due for some crazy stuff. You're going to hear a lot of people going off these readings and all they're thinking is, we're going to do this. That's not what's happening. Boring. Very boring. Probably for like 2 years, it's going to be boring. Once we find the low, it'll be 2 years before we're even at the high, as it's been historically for Bitcoin. Okay? Doesn't mean that there won't be moments of excitement, but likely it will be boring. It likely will be boring. Wouldn't be surprised if whenever we come up here, we form like some type of inverse head and shoulders here, and that gets people excited from the get-go, but they forget that we have to be boring before we actually form that right shoulder. Anyways, maybe we do that. Maybe it won't be an inverse head and shoulders after all, but just a thought. 2-week time frame. We look at the 2-week time frame. The question that comes to my mind really with that 1-week analysis is this the low? There's a chance that it is. There's a chance that it is. There were a couple instances where we came out of the oversold zone and we did not go lower afterwards. There were a couple of instances where we came out of the oversold zone and we did go lower afterwards, like months later. It's kind of a coin toss. But even if this is the low, we did not move up higher immediately. Even if it's not the low, we did not drop a tremendous amount. We didn't double this, right? So get that through your head also on the weekly time frame. Was there ever an instance, and I'll just tell you right now, there wasn't. When we came out of the oversold zone, was there ever an instance that we doubled our bear market drop, right? No, there wasn't. So if we're taking it from the high to the low, anybody who's calling for prices below 40K, you're crazy. You literally don't make sense. None of that's possible. If it is, something's wrong with Bitcoin. We got to find a new hobby. Okay, that's the reality of it. Again, not a single time in Bitcoin's history did we see the length of the bear market continue to drop, right? That's a very obvious statement. We could go back. I can go back. Let me just do it. Let me just screw it. Let's do it. Let's put it all back. Okay, there we go. Weekly. Right, get rid of these lines here. Okay. Here, after we got oversold, was that the length of the bear market? No, that was barely the length of your last drop is what it looks like, right? We take this drop from a high to a low right there. It's a rough drawing, but still the high to low is still accurate there. We put it at the high of that consolidation phase. You barely went a little bit below that. Barely. Certainly not the whole length of the bear market. Here, did you go lower? No. Here, did you go lower? No. Here, did you go lower? No. You didn't go lower at all there. Here, did you go lower? No. Here, did we go lower? Yes. What was the length here? It was a very small drop. It was more of a time-based drop instead of a price-based drop here. Okay, so again, the very clear conclusion doesn't mean that it's a guarantee. Anything can happen. We can get a strange outlier of a drop here. But the thought here is that the only thing that we've really seen was that we saw a drop that was very comparable to the prior drop, and it was a little bit bigger. So if we take this from a high point here in this consolidation range, at worst, we would drop to something around 45K. At worst. I doubt we get that low even, personally. Anybody who's calling for 40K or lower, what you're talking about then is taking the whole length of the bear market we have thus far, putting it at the perceived top that we have here in this consolidation phase, and then this is what we're going to see. It's just nonsensical. It doesn't make sense. It's not what we've seen historically, and what we have seen historically beyond everything I've said is that bear markets get weaker as time goes on. We've seen weaker bear markets and bull markets as time has gone on. Anybody calling for 40K or lower in this bear market, you need to work on yourself. Okay, you need to get away from the fear. You need to stop listening to the media. Okay, just hit the books, get some sleep. Very confident that we don't even go below 50K by the end of this bear market. But if we do, probably oh so slightly. That's all. 2-week time frame. Another clear indicator. The RSI here. You know what? We focus so much on the RSI, I kind of forgot everything else. The stochastics are also coming out of the oversold zone. That's a big deal, you guys. The MACD is bullish divergence. That's a big deal at these lows here. Now, don't just play off of that. Bullish divergence can still build over time and take longer for it to break still. Like we had bullish divergence here. We did not break out immediately. It took some time. Okay. We had bearish divergence here. We did not flop immediately. It took some time. 2-week time frame. The RSI every time so consistent. The 2-week time frame is immaculate. Every single time. These have been the end of the bear market's markings right here. These little bounces at or just below the oversold zone. Every single time. Here, end of the bear market. We did not go lower. Here, end of the bear market. We did not go lower. Here, end of the bear market. We did go a little bit lower, right? We did. End of the bear market, we can go a little bit lower. End of the bear market did not mean the start of the bull market. We moved sideways for 6 months. And it wasn't even really super bullish until like 2 years later. End of the bear market here did not mean we were bullish immediately. No, we moved sideways. And then we were stagnant here. From this high, we didn't get above this high for 19 months, you guys. End of the bear market, sure, but not the beginning of the bull market. We moved sideways for a long time. So just because we're at the end of the bear market and we're clearly at these low levels, and I do think that we still have lower to go, but by barely, doesn't mean that we're in any kind of bullish dynamic right now, okay? The people who are telling you to do this or that we're going to do this, we're going to rip all the way up to 160K. I've seen the charts. You guys have probably seen it. What if we do this? We go up to 160K. Those people are just as crazy, in my opinion, and I'm not trying to harp on you, but at the same time I mean what I'm saying, just as crazy as the people who are telling us that it's going to go below 40K. I entertained the thought that we were going to go below 40K for a second there. I think I made one video where I actually made that a prediction. And then shortly then after, I was like, that's crazy. That is totally crazy. That's not going to happen. I had one of my buddies talk sense into me. He didn't show me this stuff. This is all my work. But he made sense of it to me. Talking about the overall channel that we've had since Bitcoin's, and not on the log chart, but on the linear chart. Anyways, different time for different story for a different time. Weekly RSI, 2 weekly RSI, both shooting clear signals that we're at a low point. This is a great time to buy. We're at 71.4K. I believe we're going to go back below 70K again. Take it as an opportunity to buy the dip at a legendary area. But you said it might go lower. Who cares? Who cares? You could buy, if you bought at this high, do you think that they care at all? They don't care. You're a genius. A- versus A+. If you're super special and you want that A+ stuff because you're just, you're the teacher's pet and you want the 4.0, 5.0, whatever, I get it. You can wait for that. But you're gambling. If you buy for the long term, there's no gamble. It's assured of what's coming next, right? It's just going to take time. 2-week stochastics, same kind of concept. Anytime we've been oversold has marked the low areas of the bear markets. The MACD, it's a little bit less consistent historically speaking, but we are at a low point here being around the zero. I don't have anything else that I want to say. This video went on way longer than I meant for it to, but we've covered the weekly and the 2 weekly because this is Sunday. it is the closing period for both of these periods here, the closing day for both these periods. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you on the next one, okay? Take care. Ta-ta. And I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if this bear market gave us the lowest lows in the RSI's history that we've ever seen. Right? Each cycle on the monthly time frame, low, lower low, lower low, lower low, will probably get a lower low. And that will mark the end. And I mean, we're already getting marks of the end, but I think that that will be like the official lower low end, like it was here. Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.